Welcome to This Week in Big Sky Basketball. I'm your host, Denise Thompson, and I am back with the one and only Culture Nuanez of Skyline Sports. How are you doing today, Culture?
Great. This is a great real-time recording. We got some Montana State men's basketball players shooting some hoops right in front of me. So happy to be doing it from the great city of Bozeman. Usually I'm in Missoula, but in Bozeman today.
Man, what a week it has been for the Big Sky basketball, men's and women's. And let's just start off by talking about Eastern Washington. The men have surged to the top of the standings with a 9-2 record. Are they now kind of showing that potential and everything that media members saw as they were picked to win the Big Sky?
I think so, and it's easy to forget because it was such a long time ago and not that long ago at the same time that Eastern Washington is the defending league champions, and they went 16-4 in league play last year. They were really good a year ago as well. And, half the reason I'm in Bozeman was to cover Eastern Washington against Montana State this last weekend. I was very, very impressed. I got a chance to catch up with Shante Liggins, Eastern Washington head coach, after the game, and I thought he summed it up pretty succinctly. He said, we don't really run a lot of sets. We don't run a lot of plays. We run concepts. I just want my guys to play. And so when they were having time off, where they weren't necessarily being able to get into action week after week, they didn't have much flow. Now that they've been able to play multiple weeks in a row, you see them absolutely tearing it up. I mean, they're sitting there on a 7-game win streak, and they're averaging almost 90 points a game per. So the offense is humming, and the defense is going along with it as well. So Eastern Washington definitely looking like the defending league champs and the preseason league favorites right now.
Talking about preseason favorites, two of the top teams on the women's side were Idaho State and Idaho, and they went against each other this past weekend where they split the series. What was that series, just what you thought it was going to be, or was there something that kind of shocked you?
Well, honestly, the first game of the series went about how I thought it would go, not necessarily in the winner, but just in the style of game. It was Idaho State's style of game. It was a knockdown, drag-out, really physical game, low scoring, and Idaho State won. I was pretty surprised, honestly, with the result on Saturday. Idaho played exceptionally well, and they won 73-56. I didn't think I was going to see that sort of a margin of victory. So I'm not surprised by the split. They are the two best teams in the league. But I was surprised that Idaho was able to sort of pull away from Idaho State like that. But Idaho, they have a couple really interesting factors. But to me, their X factor that goes along with boosting up Gina Markson and Beyonce Bay, a couple of the best players in the league, is the reemergence of Gabby Harrington. Gabby Harrington was an awesome player at Montana. She grad transferred to Idaho, which is a rare thing. We hardly ever see grad transfers within the league. And now that Harrington is back healthy and in the starting lineup, she's awesome for Idaho. I mean, she had 25 points and 12 rebounds, and that just makes Idaho that much harder to beat.
Speaking of teams to beat, when you look at both the men's and the women's standings, there's a pileup. So who do you think has a schedule and who has been healthy and playing well that's going to lead into their favor to finish atop the Big Sky standings?
Well, I think that this next weekend, and we're going to get into it a little bit later on, too, with some of my top games of the week, but it's a big test for Eastern Washington again, because although Montana's maybe not what they have in the last couple of years, it's always a rivalry. And Montana swept Eastern Washington last year. They're the only team to sweep the Eagles. On the women's side, too, we got another showdown coming up with Idaho State and Montana State. And, there's a lot of rivalries in the league, and a lot of times we hype up the main ones, but there's always these really cool secondary ones as well. And I think that Montana State and Idaho State would both tell you, like, when they play, they consider that a rivalry game. So I think that they consider it a rivalry game. So I think that that's certainly those games are going to be impactful as well. But, I think that even though we are getting kind of towards the stretch run, there's still a lot of basketball to be played. Southern Utah could still win the league on the men's side. Idaho State has been a surprise in the league, but they have it rolling right now. Weber State as well. So Eastern Washington's business is far from being finished at this point. And on the women's side, we do have kind of a defined top three, but I think that the race for the fourth and fifth spots is going to be amazing. It's going to be epic, I think it's going to come down to the wire as well. So still a lot of basketball to be played, no doubt, on both sides.
Absolutely. We know how important it is for that bye for those teams to have it during the first round of the Big Sky Basketball Championships. And all right, we have Mary Louise Cook coming up next with the Big Sky Athletes of the Week.
Thanks, Denise. On the women's side, we saw graduate transfer Gabby Harrington of Idaho women's basketball earn the honor for her performance against Idaho State for the first time this season. Harrington averaged 23.5 points, 11 rebounds, 1.5 steals, and 1 assist per game in a series split against the Vandals. She recorded back-to-back double-doubles for her second and third times this season. This is the third time this season a member of Idaho women's basketball has earned the honor. Now on the men's side, we saw junior Kim Aiken Jr. of Eastern Washington earn the award for the first time this season after averaging a double-double last week and 2 road victories over Montana State. In the 2 games combined, Aiken Jr. was perfect from the free throw line, averaged 16 points and 10.5 rebounds. His impressive performance helped lead the Eagles to their 6th and 7th consecutive wins, which is the longest win streak in the conference. Now, if you're looking for a chance to appear on Pluto TV or other promos during Big Sky in Boise, then you are going to want to sign up for How Well Do You Know Your School and or Beat the Commissioner. Links to the signups and additional details are included in this post. The deadline to sign up is February 19th. Back to you, Denise.
And we're back. I'm here with Coulter. And Coulter, let's talk about who you think right now is just the sharpshooter on the men's side.
Well, I was kind of dreading this one, not because anything about this young man, but his name is going to be a mouthful. Sayoko Sohoho Jawara. I think I got it right. I think through Jawara, I know I'm confident in that. That's what we were just calling him on the radio last week. But he is absolutely lighting it up at Weber State. He's a transfer from Loyola Marymount. And his shooting splits are honestly ridiculous. I mean, he's shooting 45% from beyond the arc right now, but he's made 15 of his last 23 three-pointers in league play. He literally didn't miss against Montana State in Ogden 2 weeks ago. I know you were at those games, Denise. I think he went 7 of 7 from deep in the 2 games. And so, I mean, he's absolutely lighting it up. But, I mean, for a guy who has the ball in his hands, who plays on the perimeter, to be shooting 57% overall from the floor, and that's an amazing number. I mean, the only 2 guys that are ahead of him in field goal percentage are the 2 best big guys in the league. So to have a jump shooter shooting those clips, it's pretty impressive by Jawara. He's been a welcome addition to Weber State's roster.
You know, and in the past on the women's side, there's been quite a few people, right, who are known for the 3 ball, known for just being able to put the ball in. Who do you have as a women's sharpshooter right now?
Well, the one that I think finally had a breakthrough this last weekend was Caitlin. They call her KJ Lamardo from Montana State. Montana State's had a ton of freshmen step up and take turns kind of going off, but she's been the one that has been in the starting lineup from start to finish. She's gotten a bunch of looks, and I've kept saying on my radio show, there's going to be a game where she catches fire. Well, she did. She caught fire on Saturday, and she hit 6 straight three-pointers. And so now here we are in the season where you've had Montana State freshmen have hit multiple three-pointers in the game. All 5 of the ones that play for Trisha Binford have had multiple three-point makes in a game. And I think they've combined for close to 50 made three-pointers. That's an amazing number when you're talking about true freshmen competing in this league. And KJ Lamar is just the latest one that has caught fire.
So having a depth on your roster is what's key, you know, for all these teams to make it through not only the Big Sky Championship, but also to be able to do well in the NCAA tournament. So who do you think right now has one of the best benches in the league for the women?
On the women's side, this last weekend's best bench performances probably came from Montana, which is definitely a welcome sign because they've been relying on their starting lineup a lot. They have one of the best pairs of posts in the league in Carmen G. Feller and Abby Anderson. But against Weber State, Kylie Froelich came off the bench and had a career-high 14 points on Thursday. And then Kendall Keller, who's a true freshman, she came off the bench and had 10 points on Saturday, including hitting what was the go-ahead bucket as Montana eked out that win over Weber State. It's funny because Weber State hasn't won a league game, and I think they're the team in the league that no one wants to play because everybody knows that they're getting better and they're knocking on the door of getting that win. And so it was a huge bucket for Keller to help Montana put Weber State away because I do think that they've had some struggles this year, but I do think Weber State's a team that's improved a lot. And I think they're going to get a win before this is all said and done.
For the men on the bench?
On the men's side, the bench for the men has been this is an easy answer because they've been amazing all year long, and that's Idaho State. Ryan Looney made the move earlier in the year to bring Malik Porter off the bench, and Porter is one of the best athletes in the league, period. He was one of the best players in the league last year, and he's fully bought into the bench role. I mean, if you're getting 12 points a game from a guy coming off the bench, that's amazing. And this last weekend against Idaho, he was good, and Emmett Tyler was really good as well. So Idaho State, they've been getting about 25 a game off their bench, and that's a pretty good boost. And I think that's what has them as the surprise team in the league. I mean, they're 7-3 right now in league play. I don't think a lot of people had them tied with Weber State for second place in the league this late in the season.
Yeah, I definitely understand. All right. Who's your game of the week for the men?
Well, I think that as long as Travis DeCuire is the head coach at Montana and Shante Leggins is the head coach at Eastern Washington, when these two teams play, it's going to be the game of the week because it is intense is not even a good enough word for what these
a lot of energy, culture, a lot
of energy. And if you've ever watched either of these guys coach, I mean, they both bring the heat. And Shante is one of the most entertaining guys in the entire country to watch coach because he brings the confidence for his guys from start to finish. But this has been a great rivalry the last several years. I mean, these two teams played in the league championship game each of the last two times we were fortunate enough to have one. And then last year, Eastern Washington rolled through the league except for against Montana. Montana smacked Eastern Washington both times. But I think that the Eagle guys remember that. I mean, I was in the tunnel talking to Coach Leggins after the Montana State game on Saturday, and you could hear the Eastern Washington guys already talking about the Grizz. Kim Aiken Jr. was walking out the tunnel saying, "Hey, we got to come back to Missoula next week, and this is going to be the real deal." So it's going to be a fun rivalry as it always is, and one I look forward to every year.
We had some good series last week on the women's side, but who is going to be the one this week?
It's got to be Montana State and Idaho State because it's a similar dynamic to that Eastern Washington rivalry where you have two coaches that have been in the league for a long time. They've been battling each other for a long time, and Tricia Binford and Seton Sobolewski. This has also been two teams that have had a lot of success. I mean, Idaho State, there was the epic double overtime game in Bozeman about 5 years ago that Montana State ended up winning to clinch their first regular season title under Coach Binford. The next season, when the Cats were the number one seed, there was the infamous half-court buzzer beater that Juliette Jones hit to knock out Montana State in their first Big Sky tournament game, which is one I'll never forget. And, yeah, it's just been a battle back and forth. So, you got the Bengals now hanging on to their first place, playing against the hottest team in the league in the Bobcats who've won 8 in a row. And so I think it's not only a big game for the league standings, but one that has a lot of history behind it and one that I think both teams are going to bring it for sure.
Definitely only have a couple more weeks left of Big Sky play, obviously counting down to the Big Sky Basketball Championships that kicks off in Boise on March 8th on the women's side, with the men following 2 days later. So great to have you, Culture. We definitely appreciate it. We're going to kick it over to Mary Luz as she breaks down the standings. Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's look first at the women's side. With less than a month left in the season before a champion is crowned at the Big Sky Championship in Boise, Idaho State, Idaho, and Montana State continue to fight for the number one seed and are within 2 games of the first place spot. Last week we saw a battle between in-state rivals Idaho State and Idaho, which resulted in a series split. After sweeping their series against Eastern Washington, Montana State is on an 8-game win streak. Now, also of note, Portland State pulled out 2 last-second victories over the NAU Lumberjacks last week to improve to 6-6 in conference play, moving them up 2 spots in the standings since this time last week. On the men's side, we only saw 1 change in the standings comparing this time last week to now. Idaho State has taken the spot of Montana State at the 4 spot. Now, both Idaho State and Eastern Washington completed conference sweeps. The Eagles remain in control of the Big Sky standings after sweeping Montana State on the road. The Big Sky Player of the Week, Kim Aiken Jr., averaged a double-double to lead the Eagles past Montana State, while Tariq Cool scored 36 points in Idaho State's 2 wins over in-state rival Idaho. Southern Utah, Portland State, Sacramento State, and Idaho State all earned non-conference wins after adding matchups to their schedules. Now, know that you can catch all the Big Sky basketball home games for free on Pluto TV. Until next week, let's keep the conversation going on social media. Be sure to give at Big Sky Conf a follow on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. And if you're looking for around-the-clock information on Big Sky basketball, be sure to follow at Big Sky WBB and at Big Sky MBB. Thanks for joining us for this week in Big Sky basketball. We'll see you right back here next week.